Dr. Arslan Hamid will be talking on artificial intelligence. I'm privileged to introduce Dr. Arslan Hamid. Arslan Hamid. Dr. Arslan Hamid is an expert in machine learning applications in biological big data. He has developed an algorithm to quantify the amount of antibody-antigen interaction in lateral flow assays. And in his doctoral work, he worked on the lipid metabolomics of obese patients with cardiovascular disorders in the University of Bonn, Germany. Dr. Hamid also worked as research fellow in Redbound University, Netherlands. Currently, he's working in Lyme's Institute, University of Bonn. Dr. Arslan, we are very grateful to you for sparing us your precious time and helping our students and all the participants to learn about this very emerging area, artificial intelligence, and I hope that your session will prove productive. And I'm very much optimistic of our participants that they'll pay full attention and demonstrate full zeal and at the same time raise questions at the end, which would reflect that they really understood it. And if there are some points to be clarified, so that will be clarified in the discussions. So I invite Dr. Arslan Hamid to please start his presentation. Dr. Arslan Hamid.
Yes, thank you very much for a very brief and very accurate introduction. And so again, I will introduce myself. My name is Arslan Hamid, and I have done my bachelor's in biochemistry and molecular biology from the University of Gujarat. And then I did my master's in biomedical engineering with a specialization of biomedicine from Hochschule-Furtwangen University of Germany. And my PhD was in immunology, metabolism, and metaflammation at the Limes Institute of University of Bonn. And currently I'm associated with this Life and Medical Sciences Institute, or the Limes Institute as they say, and the University of Bonn as well. And I'm also associated with the immunosensation cluster. And again, I'm also associated with the Radboud University of Medical Sciences of Netherlands, or Holland. And so I will just let you know a little bit brief about what currently I'm working on. As the professor again, told you that I worked on, in my PhD, I worked on 300 obese cohort. There was a study of 300 obese patients. That everything was collected from there, from starting from the blood to their carotid arteries and the plaques present in their arteries. This cohort was designed on the basis of a specific age limit, which was from 54 age to 81 age. And there were male and the female were also involved in that. And because they were obese people, so of course we had to design a certain kind of a criteria that their BMI must be above a specific limit of which consists of obesity. So this obesity was the 26 kilogram per meter cube to 45 kilogram. And again, as they said, that this cohort was also included with the patients of the cardiovascular diseases. So CRP, which is a very a good marker to indicate the cardiovascular diseases. We also had to keep an eye on that as well. And of course, there were other criteria that we also recorded, and the parameters. So including the resistance, the total cholesterol, the plaque presence, and the LDL. We also did the metabolomics, the omics data, the genomics data for all of these 300 patients. And currently, what I'm working on is on the plasma samples of these patients. And these plasma were extracted from their bloods. And the question was, some of these patients were having these cardiovascular diseases, including the presence of the plaques in their carotid arteries, and also they were reported the hypertensive, but some of them were not. So the question arises, why? Why was there a change in between them? So what we decided is to do a lipidomic analysis and identify the species that we can from these plasma. And currently I'm using a technique called the LCMS, or the liquid chromatography and the mass spectrophotometry. From this, I am able to isolate the specific amount of lipids from these 300 OB patients. And now we are in the midst of defining and classifying the species that we can get and also the subspecies as well. So this was a little bit of a brief about my project, what I'm doing right now. But today's topic is artificial intelligence and the medical biology or the biological sciences as well. So first of all, what we need to do is we need to define what an intelligence is. The intelligence is the ability to learn about, to learn from, to understand about, and to interact with one's environment. And as the German philosopher said, intelligence is not to make no mistakes, but quickly to see and how to make them good. So as we have decided that this is going to be the definition of the intelligence, we also need to define what an artificial intelligence is. So artificial intelligence can be described as, Artificial intelligence can be defined as the leverages computers and machines to mimic the problem and solving decisions-making capabilities of the human mind. This here is coming in the way, sorry. Yes, and now we need to define how does an artificial intelligence works. So artificial intelligence actually is not just a one specific system. There are going to be multiple and couple of systems involved in making a one huge big system. So the basic elements of the artificial intelligence are the artificial neurons or the artificial neural networks and the scientific algorithms or the statements that we use. This consists of the various kinds of the programmings that we use nowadays, which includes R programming, the Python, the MATLAB, and actually there are a number of artificial intelligence or the programming languages nowadays being used to define an artificial intelligence system. So artificial intelligence, in this image you can see, now it has become an umbrella term. It has taken upon a couple of other different systems in them over the period of the time. The artificial intelligence was first coined in 1950s. And of course, we have come a long way from 1950s, so we had to, of course, make up some new things as well, which include machine learning, the artificial neural networks, and the deep learning as well. So we need to define what they defined in the 1950s, what an artificial intelligence is. The artificial intelligence is any technique that enable a machine to solve a task in a way like humans do. And the machine learning is defined as the algorithm that allow computers to learn from examples without being explicitly programmed. And the artificial neural network is like a brain-inspired machine learning models. And then we have to define the deep learning, what is a deep learning as well. A subset of the machine learning which uses the deep artificial neural network as a model and automatically builds a hierarchy of the data representations. So now we need to decide how these systems work. So the basic criteria is there are going to be two types of learning involved in the artificial intelligence. So these two types of learning are called the supervised learning and the unsupervised learning. Actually, nowadays there are more kinds of learning as well, but these are the umbrella terms again. So this encompasses all of the rest of the system as well. So there I will show you a little bit of difference between the supervised learning and unsupervised learning. In the supervised learning, we label our data. We provide an annotation of the system that what we are feeding to our system has a name or has a criteria. But in unsupervised learning, we do not provide the annotations or the names of our data points. This is going to be an unlabeled input of the data. And then the supervised learning, because as the name says, so it has a feedback mechanism as well. So we need to define as long as we keep going, we need to know if our system is supervised or it is understanding what we are trying to say or no. So that we need a feedback mechanism. And because in unsupervised learning, we don't need a mechanism, so feedback mechanism. So of course we are, it's going to be unreliable if we use it over there. The data is classified based on the training data set. So there we will, as soon as we have a data set, we are going to define it into two different categories. There's going to be a training data set and there's going to be a testing data set. So we will use the training data set to train our supervised learning machine learning algorithm. And then the rest of the data set is going to be used as a testing data set. And then as soon as we have this testing and we have the accuracy numbers, so then definitely we can roll out our system into the real world applications. And in the unsupervised learning, we only assign the properties to some specific classifications of the data. The supervised learning is divided into the regression and the classification. Of course, when you work in a clinical lab or in some academic research paper or any research facility, you are required to do some regression analysis and the classification of the data results that you get. So this can be used in there as well. And but in the case of the unsupervised learning, it is only divided into the clustering and the association. I will give you a couple of actually one of the examples later, so it will be better for you to understand over there. This is the supervised learning is basically used for the prediction analysis. As the professor in my introduction told you, that I designed a system which was predicting the antibody in the system of the of this lateral flow assay. So this was actually the supervised learning that I used over there. And there is also an unsupervised learning which is only used for the analysis. For example, the k-mean test or the t-test or the ANOVA. So these are the unsupervised learning tests as well. So here you can see the supervised learning algorithms include the decision tree, the random foresting, the logistic regression. And in this unsupervised learning, you can see the k-means, as I told you before, and the clustering, and the hierarchical clustering, and the a priori algorithm. Of course, in the supervised learning, because we are feeding the data points into our system, so we know how many classes that we are going to feed into our system. And in unsupervised learning, we do not label or we do not classify our data, so we are not sure how many classes are going to be defined by the system for us. And the next, of course, I'm going to give you an example of the supervised learning. Here you can see that the input data here shows some apples, and with the annotation files, we are going to tell our system that these are the apples. So whenever you see, whenever we will feed you an unknown data, just identify these apples from all of those data and let us know which of the images you find consist of apples. So this is going to be an supervised learning. And in an unsupervised learning, here you can see there are an unknown number of images. We're just going to feed it, and the system is going to classify them on the basis of their appearance or some the pixel presentation or any other properties. Of course, it depends on the kind of the data set that we provide to our system. This is going to define it into the cluster form, and then from the cluster we can make some analysis, or we can make some annotations, or whatever the kind of the analysis that we want. So now we have learned a little bit about the supervised learning and unsupervised learning. The question comes is, why is it called a neural network or the artificial intelligence? Why this is related to the specific words which are being used only for the human beings or some specific primates? So the answer is going to be, here you can see this is the neuron cell. And this is actually the version of what our neural networking is nowadays. Here you can see on the left hand side there are dendrites, and coming to the right there is a soma, there is a myelin sheath, and then there is an axon terminal. So these are the specific terms which we use for a human or actually a primate neural cell. And also on the left side, you can see that there are inputs, and on the right hand side, there are outputs as well. So what we do here is the dendrites, they receive the specific kinds of the stimuli, and then the soma decides and the myelin sheath decides what kind of that appropriate response is going to be in the response of that stimuli. And the axon terminals, using the synapses, transfer this data further. So this is exactly how the neural network works. Here you can see this is a very basic type of the neural network. We supply the system with the input values, and then there is going to be a hidden system in between here, including the bias and the activation function, which encompasses of all of the programming that we are going to do. And then at the end, we are only going to get the output data. Here I will show you a side-by-side comparison of the neuron and comparison of the artificial neuron as well, that why we call it a neural network. So this here probably you can you can understand a little bit that why this is called an artificial neuron. Here you can see the dendrites. Here also it's depicted as a dendrites, and then there's going to be a hidden compartment here which encompasses that how this data is going to be perceived and what kind of an appropriate response is going to be. And then, of course, we receive an output in that response. Now we're going to talk about the pros of the human intelligence and the artificial intelligence, and then we're going to talk about the cons of the human intelligence versus the artificial intelligence. So the human intelligence encompasses of the intuition, the common sense, and the judgment, the creativity, and the beliefs. The humans are capable of doing all of these things. The human also has the ability to demonstrate their intelligence by communicating effectively. But on the other hand side, the artificial intelligence is going to do only those specific things which it is going to be programmed with. Humans are plausible of the reasoning and the critical thinking, so it encompasses of showing some kind of common sense, so which artificial intelligence is yet not being able to do. But on the other hand side, artificial intelligence has the ability to simulate the human behavior and the cognitive processes as well. Artificial intelligence is also able to capture and preserve the human expertise. It can do a lot of things which human can do, but on a better scale. So artificial intelligence has a fast response because it uses a lot of the computational power. Although here the human brain is capable of doing it, but of course we are physically not possible to do that right now, but maybe in some far future. But right now, currently, the neural network and the computational power, they are able to do that. The cons of the human intelligence and the artificial intelligence encompasses. In the human intelligence, humans are fallible. They tend to make mistakes. But on the other hand, artificial intelligence or the computation system is going to do only those specific things which we program it to do. If we don't program it to make mistakes, it will never make mistakes. The human intelligence, they have limited knowledge bases. On the other hand side, the artificial intelligence, because we can just have bigger data frames, so it will encompasses all of the knowledge that it can get. The human intelligence, the information process of the serial nature proceed very slowly in the brain as compared to the computers. Of course, now they are quantum computing, and they are very, very, very fast, and they use very big, huge data frames. Of course, they can comprehend a lot of the information in a very quick time. The humans are unable to retain large amount of memory of the data, actually the memory, of course, yes. But on the other hand side, of course, the computational power, now we have come a very long way from the 1960s. We can store a lot of information in a very compound state. The artificial intelligence, because it does not have any common sense, so if it comes to the critical thinking, it is going to halt. If it has to make some kind of a judgment calls, it will not be able to do that. So the only God gave humans this kind of property, so only we are able to do that, and some primates, of course. The artificial intelligence cannot readily deal with the mixed knowledge. If it's because the system is going to be defined for some specific works. If there is going to be another input data which the system is not programmed with, this is going to make some problems. So the mixed knowledge is going to be a problem for the artificial intelligence. And making an artificial intelligence and a big computational power is going to cost a lot of money. Because we have come again a long way from 1960s when the first computers, and actually before that as well, rolled out for the public. But still the cost of the heavy computational power is still so much. And it raises the legal and the ethical concerns as well. Even, again, we are all biologists here. And biotechnologists and biomedical engineer, of course. So we have this issue that when it comes to the cloning, there are some legal and ethical issues. So same goes for the artificial intelligence as well. There is a word that they say that we should not play God in making the artificial intelligence. So we should keep in our bounds and the limits. So now I will just give you some real world applications that we are using for the artificial intelligence in this world nowadays. Because we are, again, as I said, we are biologists and biomedical engineers, so we need to know how the artificial intelligence is helping in the healthcare system. So in the healthcare system, there is something called the telehealth. The artificial intelligence is helping in the telemedicine, the lifestyle management, and the disease management. All of these logos that you see are the specific applications which are already being rolled out for the public using the artificial intelligence as well. And then in the research area, which encompasses you and me as well, the drug discovery, which are definitely you are going to do tomorrow, hopefully, and the information and the clinical trials, which I am doing right now, and the genetic research as well. And also for the doctor-facing sides, artificial intelligence is being used nowadays, including the medical records, the data analytics. For example, we have the images of the X-rays or some MRI data or the CT scan data, but some of it is going to be very difficult to perceive and to understand. So artificial intelligence is helping us over there as well. In the hospital system, of course, in order to make a huge data frame of all of the patients that visit the hospital every single day, now the artificial intelligence is helping over there as well. So on the patient-facing side of the system, this is also, the artificial intelligence is also being used, including the AI chatbots. Of course, on any website you go nowadays and ask for some kind of a help from that website, first of all, you will be met with the chatbots. So this is also an artificial intelligence, and actually nowadays some companies have made the Facebook pages and the Instagram pages and the TikTok accounts for some artificial intelligence, and the artificial intelligence itself is controlling those pages. So no human contact is allowed in those specific accounts of the Instagram and for this TikTok accounts. And also you can see here the wearable devices. Of course, you can see nowadays these Apple watches or the Samsung watches, or actually a lot of other watches, all of them, they are being used under the influence of the artificial intelligence as well. Then, of course, artificial intelligence is also helping in the personalized genetics, in the mental health area, and the women health and the skincare product company as well. Now I will give you a couple of examples from the published articles as well. This is actually a very beautiful paper from the P. Asha from the Chennai, India, which the title is "The Artificial Intelligence in the Medical Imaging: An Analysis of Innovative Technique and Its Future Promise." Here they talk about the data of the medical imaging, which is the richest source of the various information of the patients, which often seems most complex to analyze. With the huge data of the MRI, the CAT scans, the X-rays, or the other testing components, it is extremely challenging to combine the high-resolution images, even for the highly experienced medical professionals. So the medical imaging has explored the multidimensional innovating approach of the artificial intelligence that may create the vibrant opportunities in the future. Analyzing through the current best use, it illustrates the reason why it should be applicable in the medical field as well. So they also talk about some different kind of subfields that the artificial intelligence can be used in. So here, first of all, they talk about the recognizing the cardiovascular abnormalities. Using the artificial intelligence to detect the Marshall enlargement in the chest X-ray may rule out the other pulmonary and the cardiac problems. The artificial intelligence could be helpful to automate the measurement tasks like the measurement of the aortic valve or the carina angle detection of the pulmonary artery diameters. So this is the kind of the thing that I already did when we were designing this 300 OB cohort. So because as I told you, we were using the plaques from the carotid arteries, so we had to use some kind of a system where we can also measure the thickness of the walls, the thickness of the plaques, how many plaques are present. So we used a small system of the machine learning algorithm by just using the images that we took from those carotid arteries. So they also talk about the detecting the musculoskeletal injuries and the other fractures as well. The musculoskeletal injuries and the fractures can cause a long-term sufferings if it is not sorted very quickly. The artificial intelligence is most useful to detect the smallest but the significant fractures that are hard to find. The soft tissue injuries, the dislocations can be cured more confidently by the application of the artificial intelligence by the surgeons. They also talk about the diagnosis of the neurological diseases, the degenerative neurological problem like the amyotrophic lateral sclerosis or the ALS. You all, of course, know about the ALS. A couple of, I think, years ago, there was a trend going on the TikTok and on Instagram that the celebrities were throwing these ice buckets on their head in actually. To making some collecting some donations for the people of the ALS. So this is actually being diagnosed by the artificial intelligence as well. The artificial intelligence is able to distinguish between the PLS and the ALS. PLS says the primary lateral sclerosis, and the ALS is the amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. This is able to identify individually and only dependent on the imaging studies. So the recent research about the ALS detection and the artificial application indicates a significance of the speed and the accuracy as well. They also talk about the identifying the thoracic complications. The artificial intelligence algorithm can access images and x-rays for providing the evidence of the opacities which indicate the pneumonia and give alert for the potential diagnosis. Artificial intelligence also allows faster treatment observing the diagnosis. Here, the artificial intelligence may appear capable of prioritizing the type and its severity, which may help in taking decisions following its urgency. Now, actually, the best part is how the artificial intelligence is able to screen for the cancer as well. Artificial intelligence can help give the accuracy and the best use of the imaging features to categorize the microcalcification through the suspicion of the ductal carcinoma in situ, or the DCIS. This is the kind of the biopsy they do for the benign tumors. Similarly, the artificial intelligence can also be used for the head and the neck cancer detecting, and also for the colorectal cancer, the prostate cancer, and the cervical cancer. So this is all being done on the basis of the images which is being collected from the patients. So they also talk about that, again, as I showed you before, the artificial intelligence has become now an umbrella term which was being used in the 1950s, and it encompasses the machine learning and the deep learning as well. And the 2022 stats says the heart disease, in the detection of the heart disease, 63% of the times artificial intelligence is being used in order to diagnose any kind of the cardiovascular diseases or the atherosclerosis. Even in the cancer detection, you can see the 65% of the time artificial intelligent systems are being used in order to detect the cancers from all of those imaging data. The diabetes, of course, the 66%, the highest one. I will talk about diabetes in the end a little bit. The second paper I want to talk about is the artificial intelligence for detecting the mitral regurgitation using the electrocardiography. This mitral regurgitation is a cardiovascular disease as well. The screening and early diagnosis of the mitral regurgitation, or the MR, are crucial for preventing the irreversible progression of the MR. They have developed a validated and artificial system, an artificial algorithm for the detection of the mitral regurgitation using the electrocardiography, or the ECG. In this paper, they have designed also a cohort study, and they recruited 24,000 patients from 2 different hospitals, and they collected around 56,000 ECGs from all of those patients. And this is a kind of the data that we can perceive here. Here in this figure, you can see that this is a 12-lead ECG, and they use this ECG data as a predictor variable. And in this ECG data, they use a 5,000 number from each lead. Here on the image, of course, it says 4,000. This is, I think they made a mistake in making the image. But in the literature, it says the 5,000 number of each lead recorded over the 10 seconds, which would make it 500 hertz. And at the end, the data which will be received by the artificial intelligence will be the 60,000 numbers of the total data points. And the artificial algorithm was developed using the convolutional neural network with the 2-dimensional convolutional, and the max pooling, the flatten, the batch normalization, and the dropout layers as well. You cannot see them here, of course, but these are some of the terminologies which are being used in the neural networking. So they also talk about, this is actually the validation step that they perform here. This is the internal validation. Here you can see the internal validation. The AUROC and the AUPRC of the algorithm were 0.816 and 0.60 during this, and as soon as they're done with the external validation, here you can see the accuracy was increased from 0.877, and actually the accuracy of the AUPRC was a little bit declined, but they explained in the paper that they're still working on how to differentiate between them as well. Yeah, and here they also defined that how the artificial intelligence is helping in identifying the sensitivity of the ECG as well. So they have mapped this ECG data to identify the regions to detect this mitral regurgitation. The artificial intelligence is focused on the P wave and the T wave. Here, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the electrocardiograph data. The P wave starts from here and the T wave starts from here. But on the other hand, the algorithm also focused on the QRS complex as well in those mitral regurgitation patients. So here they confirmed the cumulative hazards of the development of the mitral regurgitation in around 3,000 patients, which were beforehand, they were not put in the risk table, but as soon as they were done with the artificial intelligence, the accuracy was increased around 27%. So this was actually a fair amount of the data which they identified. Yeah. So, and the artificial intelligence, the next example that I want to talk about is the artificial intelligence is being used in the detection of the microorganisms and in the microbiology field as well. To tackle the challenges faced by the human-operated microscopy, the deep learning-based methods have been proposed for the microscopic image analysis of a wide range of the microorganisms, including the viruses, the bacteria, the fungi, and the parasites. We believe that the deep learning technology-based system will be on the front line of the monitoring and the investigation of the microorganism as well. Here you can see that this is a deep learning based imaging and the detection of the microorganism just from taking the images of those microscopic beings. So the microscopic images of the different types of microorganisms, including, again, as I said before, the viruses you can see here, and the bacteria, the parasites, and the fungi can be used as an input for the deep learning model. The deep learning is a human brain-like structure, as I told you before. And how this is going to work is the input layer will receive the input data, and the hidden layer here, you can see here, will perform the mathematical operations, and the output layer will return the output data. Here you can also see the knowledge of from the microbiologist and from all of the studies that has been done before, and the macroscopic data will also be fed into our system in order for our system to be trained, and in order for our system to be to identify all of those beings which are going to be present in front of those microscopic system. So here the images can be able to classify, and we will be able to detect the from all of those slides that which are going to be the viruses, the bacteria, and the parasites, and then we can also perform the segmentation from them. If there are going to be cluster formation, how the segmentation of the bacteria or the viruses are being formed as well. So this is actually a fairly neat system that we can see here. The artificial intelligence will just take the images from those slides or from those petri dishes or the plates, whatever your system is going to be, and then it is going to define some with the colors or with some other annotations as well. So I would also like to talk about which we're going to learn tomorrow and the day after tomorrow as well. The artificial intelligence and the deep learning is also being used in de novo drug designing and the molecular dynamic simulation as well. So this is going to probably help you to understand a little bit for the tomorrow. Right now, there are two methods being used for the de novo drug design, which are called the classical algorithms. In the first method, you can see here that the de novo drugs are designed by the fragment growth based on the initial seed in the receptor pocket. After that, the new receptor molecule population grow on the initial seed by the genetic algorithm using the Monte Carlo simulation and actually a lot of other ones. So nowadays the application that you see is called the mole alcal, and actually there are many other as well. And the second method, that the classical method that is being used nowadays, for the de novo ligands are generated without considering the receptor structure by the classical algorithm. The molecular docking method is further used to evaluate the binding affinity of the generated ligands in the receptor pocket. Nowadays, the software that you use is the Autodock, and I think that tomorrow they're going to use the MOE probably, hopefully for the docking system. Here comes the deep learning. Nowadays, again, as a topic comes, the machine learning, the deep learning, the artificial intelligence. Again, it's all an umbrella term now. There are two methods for the de novo drug design using the deep learning. Here in the first method, you can see the ligands are independently encoded to the tensors, which are some algebraic platforms. Or the ligands and the effective features of the receptors are encoded to the tensor together. After that, the suitable network of the GAN or the VAE, which is the generative adversarial network or the variation autoencoders. These are again some neural network systems are selected to train the deep learning models to match the experimental data. So what this is going to do is it is going to take all of the 3D information or the sensitivity information or any kind of the properties that you will provide to the system, and it will just give you some results as well. Of course, it depends on the kind of the input that you will provide. And the trained deep learning models can discriminate the active and the inactive compounds and perform the de novo drug design to find the compound directly. So nowadays, the software that you use using this deep learning software is called the D-linker. Probably you can search about that if you want. And the second method you see here is the deep learning generative model, which is trained for producing the new molecular using the SMILES library. This is also another machine learning algorithm that you use. It's called the Statistical Machine Intelligence and the Learning Engine, or SMILES. Then the 3D ligand, which are converted from the molecular SMILES string, are docked into the receptor targets. Finally, then the deep learning models of the binding affinity prediction are used to virtually screen the de novo drugs. Of course, the drugs can be ranked for the virtual screening by the score function of the molecular docking software. Another software which is being used is called the Linker here. And the next thing that you are going to learn probably the day after tomorrow, I think you will have some lectures on the GROMACS and the hand-on practice, hopefully. Here, the deep learning is also being used in the molecular dynamic simulations. Here in this image, you can see that a common workflow of deep learning for the molecular dynamic simulation. First, you saw the raw data. For the deep learning can contain the information of the energy, the forces, the virial, the boxes, and so forth. There could be a number of properties which can be obtained also from the molecular dynamic simulation results as well. The representative decepticators are extracted from the raw data. After that, again, you can see the deep learning network, the CNN or the GN that I explained before, are employed to train and test the prediction model. Finally, the deep learning model produces a useful parameter and the data for running the MD simulations together with the classical MD simulation softwares. So of course, you're going to use GROMACS. There is a VMD, there is LAMPS, and there are actually many more softwares nowadays. But the best one is GROMACS right now. That's actually a very good thing that you're going to learn it the day after tomorrow. Now I will talk about one of the greatest ventures of the Google, which everybody knows. Of course, the company Google. They are also invested in the artificial intelligence. This is one of the paper from them, the deep learning to detect the OCT-derived the diabetic macular edema from the colored retinal photographs. As I explained you before in the first paper, that they said that there is a 66% use of the artificial intelligence in the diabetic area of the sciences now. So what Google is doing, Google is taking the retinal scans of the people from the who are suffering from the diabetes, and they're going to predict if these patients are going to get the blindness just because of this diabetes in the future or not. So this is a very interesting system you can see. this is how they're going to define a system where they will just provide the system with the retinal scans of the patients, and this is going to define if this is going to be the retinopathy of the grades of from 1 to, I think there are 5 grades, hopefully, I guess. This is how they will take the first image, and the neural networking will be formed on the basis of the many images that they're going to detect. So the neural network will form, and as soon as the neural network is formed, this is how the system is going to look. That you will be able to drop your image, and in a couple of seconds it will be able to detect that the diabetic retinopathy grade number 1 or the 5 or the 4 or the thing goes on. Hopefully this software is not going to be publicly available, because I'm sure in the home or normally we are not allowed or able to get our retinal scans. So this is only going to be able in some future hospitals, hopefully. And the last thing that I want to talk about is the Neuralink. Of course, everybody knows about the Elon Musk and the ventures that he's taking nowadays. So one of the ventures that he has is called the Neuralink, where they are merging your brain with the artificial intelligence. What they are going to do is they are defining a specific hardware system which they are going to implant in your brain in order for you to have a lot of other properties. The new this is being used in the disease control as well. So the first application that they are going to talk about is which the Neuralink is going to help with the quadriplegia people by giving them the ability to control the computers and the mobile devices directly with their brains. So some of the people the quadriplegia people who are paralytic people, or they cannot move on their own. So this Neuralink device using the artificial intelligence is going to help them a lot. So everybody knows about this guy, the Stephen Hawking. He was also using one of this artificial intelligence system which was designed by the Intel. He was able to use this system to communicate with the other people as well. Yeah. And I would like to make a request to all of the listeners here that please learn the basics of any kind of the programming. It does not matter if it's going to be R, it's Python, the MATLAB, the Java, Mathematica, or any C++, or actually, or the list goes on. So it does not matter what kind of the programming or the basics that you learn, but if you're going to pursue the career of the academics, like you're going to pursue the research area, or you're going to go into the industry or anything like that, you are going to need a very strong statistical analysis thinking and the analytical thinking and some basics of the programming as well. So it's because why I'm saying that you should learn the basics of the programming, because when you will have the data in front of you, then there will be a problem that what are you going to do with this data? You can get a data from running a lot of experiments, but how to use that data using less computational power and with the best output, you need the basics of the programming. So I would like to thank everybody for listening here today, and I hope you learned something from this seminar. So I am now open for